Well, Sean, we have C.J. Box back on the show. How are you, sir?
Here's to you.
Joining us. Look at this man.
Welcome back, sir.
Here we go. Shadow Reel, 22nd Joe Pickett novel. I mean, that number just blows my mind. So between the novels and the novellas, what are we looking at as a reader from a Raptors point of view? And what do you have in store for Joe and company this time around?
Well, there's kind of two stories going on. The last book, called Dark Sky, ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, where although the plot of the book was certainly resolved, Nate Romanowski returns to his home to find at the very end that his all of his falcons have been stolen. His wife has been beaten up, and his little baby is hiding. And so naturally, Nate being Nate, he needs to go after the guy who did this. So this book opens up just days after Dark Sky concluded, which is kind of unusual for me. I usually have them take place a year apart. This one happens days afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's one storyline. And the other one is that a package is delivered to the 12 Sleep County Library in the middle of the night by a stranger. And when Marybeth, the director of the library, opens it up, she finds that it's an actual 1937 leather-bound photo album from what is considered the number 4 or 5 Nazi official. And it's a bunch of black and white photos of him and all of the hierarchy of Nazi government. And Marybeth has no idea why it was left at her library, but it's obvious very quickly that once the word gets out about it, there are some people who want it or want it back, and they'll do just about anything to get it. So as Nate goes through the Pacific Northwest, through some kind of riot-strewn downtowns in Denver and Seattle and Portland, dealing with extremists kind of on one side of the dial, Nate and Marybeth are confronted with some extremists on the other side, complete other side of the dial. And that the two kind of juxtaposed throughout the book till they come together in the end.
Well, I usually pick up a Joe Pickett novel and I see the thread of the kind of the Western themed issues that he faces. So World War II and Nazis weren't on my C.J. Box card for 2022.
No.
Where on the earth did you come up with this thread for the main thrust of the novel?
Well, strangely enough, it's based on a real life incident. It's something that I could get out of my mind once I learned about it a few years ago, and that was a library director in one of the libraries in Wyoming. And for some reason, he does not want me to use his name or the location. I don't know why. I said, it all happened, let's do it. But that's what happened there. Somebody dropped this actual photo album, the one I use in the book, at his library.
Oh, really? The same one?
Wow. Yeah, and he authenticated it, and then was just kind of a little bit terrified why they left it there, who it was, and began to do some research and speculate, which with a lot of evidence behind it, that there were several Wyoming GIs who were among the Band of Brothers. Stephen Ambrose, Band of Brothers, who landed in Normandy, went all the way to Hitler's Eagle's Nest at the end. And one Casper, Wyoming GI came away with Hitler's actual photo albums and his silverware and his plates. And he used to invite his friends over. They all work at the refinery in Casper, and they'd all eat sandwiches on these plates with swastikas all over them. Jeez. And drink out of swastika glasses. And he had if you look it up, you'll Hitler's photo albums, you'll see the story behind the guy who took those. He was later killed in a car wreck. But the librarian thought that perhaps the other GI had stolen or taken this other photo album of a guy named Julius Stryker, who, if you do the research on him, is probably one of the worst Nazis ever.
Yeah.
By far the most anti-Semitic. But that was his photo album. So I took that actual story and built the plot of this book around it.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating.
I had no idea that much of it.
I was fascinated.
Well, how much was
there is actually a link in the back of the book for anybody who wants to see what I'm talking about. That a photo album is now in the Hoover Institution, and they've digitalized all the photos, so you can actually look it up through it one by one if you want.
I would imagine your research was pretty heavy. How deep were the rabbit holes that you found yourself going through all this stuff?
Well, I've been kind of gathering this stuff for a few years, ever since I heard of the original story. The Band of Brothers aspect really fascinated me, because I've always been, I was a fan of the books, fan of the TV series, very interested in this, these guys, because they were at the beginning of the invasion and went all the way to the end.
Wow.
What I didn't know was about the Wyoming connection, and what I didn't know was about the photo albums, missing photo albums.
Yeah.
But I actually found some references in Ambrose's Band of Brothers to all this stolen Nazi loot from the Eagle's Nest, and it tracked back to this same guy who lived in Cassie. I believed it.
That's pretty damn. It seemed almost fated that you had to write this book, because
there you go.
Wyoming connection. That's amazing. That's one of my favorite books and series as well. One of the reasons this series, and this isn't so much specific to this book, but one of the reasons this series resonates with so many people is that while he's very capable, Joe is a true everyman hero. Men like myself can see something of themselves in him. Women can see either their husband, their boyfriend, their father, their brother in him, and the relationship between Joe and Marybeth is portrayed in an extremely authentic manner. So I really think that those are some of the keys to the longevity of the series. And in this book, this book is in others. Marybeth and her insight are key to the plot, not just finding the book, but as you know, just some of her thoughts and vision about it. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of Joe and Marybeth, and specifically, did you see them assuming these roles from the beginning, or have these traits sort of developed over time as they became who they are?
I think they developed over time, because I never envisioned a series of books. I think, we probably talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah.
And wrote the very first one. To me, it was a one-off novel, contemporary Western novel, featuring a game warden, and to be authentic to game wardens and to the research I'd done. Most game wardens are married, live in state-owned homes scattered around the state of Wyoming. And it was kind of funny. It's been funny for me over the years. It seems like all these their wives are much smarter than they are and more attractive.
But as is mine, as is Mike's. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't base it on any real game warden, but since then I've met, game warden wives who have, law degrees and ex-CEOs and stuff, and they're stuck out in the middle of nowhere with their husband who's come home with blood all over him and guts in the back of the pickup. And that juxtaposition is fun to write about, and the family developed over the course of the series. And I think the series is just about as much of the family really as anything else. Sure. And this particular book, Shadow Real, was fun because I set it around Thanksgiving, where all of the daughters come home. Yeah. So, once again, they're all thrown together and with different results.
Yeah.
Well, so at the beginning, you didn't know it was going to be a series, but then obviously it became a series, and it's gone along. Have you ever gotten any pushback on the dynamic, as in like, you need to make Joe more of a badass and less dependent on Marybeth, or have your editors and agents always kind of been on board with your vision and your approach?
My editors have always been on board. That's never been, that's been kind of an amazing gift since the beginning, as I've never had any editor ever say, you need to make it more politically correct, you need to do this, you need to do that. Never happened.
Awesome.
Marybeth is a fun character to write. The girls are fun to write from their point of view. I think, a few years ago, the publisher Putnam did some focus groups on my readership. And I'd always told them that at signings and so on, that the people who were in the audience tended to be 50-50 men and women, couples, husbands and wives. As you guys know, in the thriller genre, it's more men probably that read books than women. And in mystery, it's more women than men. And for some reason, these books seem to kind of straddle that line where there's both men and women readers. And and the focus group said it was 51% women readership.
Wow.
Which bore out what I told them, but they were shocked. And so therefore there hasn't been any pushback about, including that kind of aspect in the books.
Well, I can completely believe that, because my wife, who's, by the way, Mary Elizabeth, not Mary Beth, but this is not normally something she would pick up. But when I gave her a couple books, immediately she was like, their marriage is so real. She I mean, immediately, latched onto that, but then loved the story and loved the characters as they went. But it was something that I think, whether intentionally or not, sure has borne fruit in that regard.
Yeah. Well, it was never intentional. I never been too strategic on these things. Everybody, you guys in your book, you draw from what you know. And, my wife is the smartest person in the house. And I have 3 very opinionated, willful daughters and a female. And, so if I ever stray a little bit, they put me in my place. But it's also very helpful when I write about the books.
Yeah. Okay.
Write about
Well, the other part of the book is Nate Romanowski. He's on the hunt for a bad guy, Axel Soledad.
Correct.
And we saw him in Dark Sky, and you had mentioned previously that he had taken the raptors and beaten up Nate's family and that whole thing. And so while reading this portion of Shadows Reel, I got the sense that rather than include Nate inside of Joe's current ordeal back in Wyoming, sending Nate to Colorado and then beyond and finishing things between those two seemed to be more important to you as a writer. Is there any truth to that? Or
yeah, it was fun to do that. None of the Joe Pickett books ever had anything that's taken place outside of Wyoming and the wilderness before. This was going right into the heart of urban Northwest America. And I wanted to write about that because the seed was laid in the last book where Axel Soledad has a connection to Antifa chapters around the country.
Right.
You don't know exactly where, why, where, how, but he's obviously doing things that helping to finance and organize them. And in order to dig into that more deeply, I hit the road and went to Denver, Seattle, and Portland. I got to Portland, timed it just perfect timing for an Antifa riot right outside the hotel I was staying.
Nice.
And they smashed the windows of the hotel. Not a single cop ever showed up. The next day when I was there, it was weird. It was at the time when, I don't mean to get too political, but there were people saying Antifa wasn't really a thing. It was an idea.
Right? Yeah.
But I was outside my window, smash up the hotel. So, that idea was pretty real.
Real. Yeah.
And the next day, the mayor of Portland, was the first time he'd ever had it. And he said, he put out a proclamation because a bunch of small businesses got destroyed. He said, we have to unmask these people. And I thought, dude, you've got a mask mandate on in Portland. How are you going to do that?
Poor timing.
But it was fascinating.
Yeah.
I guess this is sort of a companion piece to my earlier question, as well as a follow-up to Mike's. Once you realized Nate was in this storyline with Joe, did you know he was in for the long haul at that part? And is his regular presence sort of a function that enables you to take a fairly straight-laced protagonist like Joe into much darker territory?
Exactly right. Joe pretty much toes the line, tries to do the right thing. I think that it's admirable to have a character like that, and I like to write that character, but it's also a lot of fun to have Nate, who will do things that are almost unimaginable at times because he has his own sense of right and wrong. And in this book, he hooks up with another falconer named Geronimo Jones.
That was
so
cool.
Nate's got his 454 Sewell, the largest, maybe the largest handgun in the world. That's disputed. Yeah. And Geronimo Jones has a triple-barreled 12-gauge shotgun. And when they start blasting away, it's a lot of firepower.
Yeah.
He's a great character.
I love Geronimo. That was fun. Well, okay.
He'll be back.
I kind of want to go back to this a little bit. There was a scene in Denver in your book with Antifa that kind of kicked off Nate's, search for Alex. I personally experienced a riot downtown Denver on Larimer Street a couple summers ago with my wife. And I was actually texting Chris about it while it was happening. And you kind of captured, well, you didn't kind of, you captured the environment and the feelings I had encountered during that event exceptionally well. Like I felt like I was kind of reliving what I experienced through that. And so I wondered if you had gone to Denver to get it, because I really felt like you captured it perfectly. Then you mentioned you were in Seattle, but have you been to Denver when some of this stuff was happening?
I was there a couple of nights after one of the big, as Antifa would call it, street actions, where a lot of graffiti all over the Capitol building, and there were people camped out. I didn't see all that going on. Yeah. I was after, whereas I did see it in Portland.
Yeah, you were in a hotel. I was on a street at a dinner table, and they were 5 feet away, flipping tables and screaming at children. And man, when I was reading those scenes, I felt like I was right back when that was happening. So that explains a lot.
Well, and it's still amazing to me that when I live in southern Wyoming, and all of our media is from Denver, and my wife is in Denver, and we have relatives in Denver. All these things were going on. Hardly anything was said about it. It was almost kind of like nobody wanted to talk about what was going on unless you'd seen it. You were in the middle of it, you wouldn't know what happened.
And the cops weren't anywhere. Like there were no cops at this whole thing. And then we finally escaped that scenario, going back to our car, and there was like 100 of them all armored up, like 3 blocks away, just hiding behind a building, not actually helping anyone while everything was happening. So to me, that was a complete shock. Like we were just pretend that it'll go away. And that was,
I don't know if anybody else has written about this yet. Other than some nonfiction books about it, but that's one of the things I found out that kind of shocked me was, yes, there are Antifa in all these cities, but the other thing, which is now kind of part of the news, is there's really not that many of them. They're a very small group, but prosecutors in those areas they release them as fast as they're arrested. Yeah. So it seems as if there's a lot more, but no, very few of them are ever brought up on any kind of charges. So they just keep going through the system, going right back out on the street.
Oh, Cherry Creek kids. That was fun.
Well, that was cruel. That part,
that was true, though.
Well, CJ, you mentioned you mentioned that you weren't necessarily trying to be political, and when I read your books, I never think, oh, Chuck's trying to make a statement about X issue here. But within the entertaining plots, there are specific perspectives that do kind of bleed out. So, do you believe, speaking of Antifa, as is depicted in Shadows Reel, that it's a group that's often manipulated and often directed by forces outside that maybe they don't even understand?
A little bit, but I also believe that there's people within Antifa chapters who want to manipulate others, or who latch on to other causes, just and manipulate, get in there, and I mean, there's a lot to it, I actually read the Antifa handbook, pretty bad writing. Fascinating stuff. And there's no way you could ever make those people happy, because they don't have much of a platform, but they want 3 things. They want the end of capitalism, the end of the government, and all indigenous lands returned back to the people who owned them originally. Those are the only three things they want. So it'd be pretty hard to accommodate any of them doing that.
Does that include Asia and everything Genghis Khan grabbed, or?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, how far back we go?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So you alluded to this with all the girls, they're home for Thanksgiving, right? And all their unique personalities and what they bring to the table. And you do have to maneuver a lot of point of views between that and Nate's story. And did you have to keep kind of a tight outline to make sure all the threads were working properly, or is it so organic now in your head that it just kind of flows out?
No, I always do a pretty tight outline before I ever start writing. You know, in this case, each of the daughters, their ages, where they're at in their lives, kind of their point of view, and then throw them all together with all that. And because that is hard. We've got three girls, and they're not in the book that much, but their personalities come through, I hope. Pretty easily and quickly. And I always enjoy writing the family dynamic stuff as much as anything else. And like we mentioned earlier, Marybeth is a much bigger part of this book than she has been since maybe open season, the very first one. She's the one kind of driving that whole narrative with the Nazi photo album, etc. Figuring out how to smoke out the bad guys, all that.
Yeah.
Joe's just kind of along the ride.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like that.
Yeah, I like that part. Well, let me ask you this: since you mentioned you have three daughters and he has three daughters, are your daughters' personalities at all represented by or are we getting into territory that your daughters don't want to talk about?
I will not answer that question, but I'll say that all three of my daughters think Sheridan was based on them.
Oh, that's
okay.
Awesome. That's awesome.
The hellbent one, yeah.
I have two daughters, and I could see them having the same debate. So.
Although they argue amongst themselves, when one of the daughters gets in trouble or stupid or drinks too much, they'll say, "Oh, that's based on you."
That's excellent. Well, open season, the first Joe Pickett book, debuted 21 years ago. And then Cassie, unbelievable. Congrats on that. But Cassie Dewell came along a decade later, and recently both have been adapted for television. So tell us what that ride's been like and what it's meant to see them both come to fruition.
Well, it's been kind of otherworldly after all this time to have them both literally be on television at the same time. I mean, who would have thought?
Yeah.
It's also wholly different between the two series. One's a big network series, Big Sky. There aren't that many books that they can draw from, and it's a whole different thing. The Joe Pickett series debuted in December on Charter Spectrum, the cable system, and then we'll move to Paramount Plus. And,
do you know when that's happening, by the way? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you know when that move's happening?
I know it'll be the fall, but I don't have a date yet.
Okay.
In fact, here's some news. They just today the announcement that it's been renewed for second season, and it was the highest rated show that Charter Spectrum has ever produced. So
that's awesome.
everybody's quite happy.
Wow,
including me.
Yeah,
because I think the first season of Big Sky was very close to the books it was based on, The Highway, and but now they've, like I said, kind of run out of books. So they've got a big writer's room coming up with different things, and I watch it. I have no idea where it's going. Whereas the Joe Pickett series was very tightly based on the first book, Open Season, with aspects of the third book, Winter Kill, with lots of lines of dialogue straight from the books and very, very close to the source material. So of course I thought that was great, and because the reception for it has been so wonderful, I'm excited. The best thing about it, I think I mentioned it to you guys last year, that I hope this would happen, is that it's really, really spurred sales of the books.
Yeah.
Most people who watch TV and movies, even if they're just marginally interested, might be interested in the source material, and that has happened. I mean, we've seen a 10-fold increase in the sales of the Cassie Dewell book since it's been on. And the Joe Pickett backlist, talking industry lingo here, has just kind of skyrocketed in the last couple of months. So, I mean, my wife and I always thought, if we ever had a television series, let's hope it's just 1 hour commercials for the books. And that has happened. That's the most important part.
We had a conversation with Mark Graney shortly after we did talk to you last time, and I told him the figures on the Cassie Dewell books, and because he'd always said, I just hope it's a good commercial for my books, and we told him that, and his eyes got really big when we told him that. I'm just glad that maybe that means that Lee Child can finally sell a book or two with this feature.
Yeah, he'll be plucked out of obscurity.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you a question. Has their presence in that medium, has it affected not necessarily the way you write them, but maybe the stories that you can tell with them going forward, or do you completely just pretend that doesn't exist?
I completely pretend that it doesn't exist. I just completed a new Cassie Dewell novel called Treasure State that will be out in September.
Wow.
And it was my Cassie. I went from page one. I didn't think about the TV show or the cast or the direction of the show or anything else. It was back to my Cassie. And it was fun to do that. I think I'm sure, like you guys, I've observed a lot of, TV shows and movies based on books and how the changes were made or not, and how the authors reacted or didn't. And, a couple models I kind of tried to think about once this started. Diana Gabaldon and her Outlander series. My wife is a huge fan, has read every one of those books. And Diana, when she's asked by readers, hey, this didn't happen in your book, she'll say, no, because it's a television show. It's not my book. And no, I don't now write with the actors in mind.
Right.
She's handled it very well. And I think Michael Connelly's another one who has had different adaptations. Some I think he liked, some I know he didn't. But he continues to just write his books. And I think that's the way to be.
But he also said that having had the experience without any involvement and the experience with involvement, he will no longer ever not be involved in some way.
Yeah.
And I just went on a Twitter rant, as I'm prone to do, the other day about the fact that, yes, they are different mediums. And from a writer's perspective, this really is immaterial. It's not how you look at it. But when a Hollywood entity comes to adapt something, my very strong belief is the closer you can remain to the source material, the more successful you're going to be with that adaptation. And plot's going to change, things are going to change because it's a different medium, but the spirit of the characters, or who the characters are at their essence, and the spirit of what the story is, if you stay close to those, you don't have to have all the details right, but you're going to be more successful. And I'm always flabbergasted when I watch a movie that, other than the title, has no resemblance to the book I read. And I don't understand why you pay the money to option or purchase a property and then not use the property.
Well, of course I agree with you. And I've been on the set of TV shows, and there are so many, it's just a solely different ballgame. There's so many moving parts. There's so many writers, there's so many egos involved that have nothing to do. I mean, I actually, will not get into specifics here. Actually heard an actor on the set say, my character would never say this. And I thought, lady, I invented you. I can take you out. How can you possibly say that? But that happened. Those are reasons why changes are made.
Wow. Well, with all the success of your adaptations now, is there any additional driving force for you to write quicker or write a little something more on things? I mean, you're making a lot of people a lot of money.
I continue to write at a pretty blistering pace. I've got a Joe Pickett book every year, and I've had a Cassie Dewell book every other year.
Right.
at some point I mean, for me, slowing down would be one book a year.
Yeah.
And
Jeez.
then I can fish more and hunt more and hang out with grandkids more. But I've got the best job in the world. I do it every day. And, when I'm between books, which is usually only like a week or two, I start to drive my wife out of her mind. So I trudge back to the office for my wife's sake, if nothing else.
Just keep the marriage alive. Keep writing.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. Chuck survived the main portion of our interview once again.
Hey, this is always fun.
Yeah, we try not to. Well, now we'll see if this part's fun. We know this can be kind of painful at times. So, all right. Well, I'm up first, and I have this on my mind. It's February, and the temperatures are super mild this week. Are you a winter nympher on the river this time of year?
Most of the river where I'm at is frozen.
Still,
the only parts that are, there's some hot springs in it, so there's some pockets open there. I'm thinking of venturing there this weekend, actually, because it has gotten mild.
Yeah,
we've had a hell of a winter where we're at. We spent 3 days getting out of our ranch to the road in January. I learned to operate a skid steer, and I even got that stuck in the
that'd
snow.
be kind of fun.
So it's been a hell of a winter, and but it's starting to see some glimpses of open ground, and elk have been moving all over our place, and that's things are starting to kind of not look like spring, but look like a fall spring we always have, where we think it's going to be, and then we get whacked. But it's starting to get like that.
Yeah, we're getting some open water on the South Platte down by me. So, all right, here we go. Do I ask this? Yeah, I'm going to ask this. All right, you're sitting with your family at an outdoor table eating dinner one evening when about 50 people all in black come storming through, beating on pots and pans and verbally assaulting folks. Doesn't appear there's any easy exit out of the situation. Then one of the intruders sets their sights on your table. Now, don't tell me what you should do or what you ought to do, but what is Chuck's natural instinct in terms of how he responds to this situation?
Wow, what a question. I think if it was with my family, my instinct would be to gather them around, as opposed to lash out on my own. Or maybe, herd them to a place where nothing, they wouldn't get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd much rather think I would, draw my .357 Magnum and start taking care of them. But in a situation with my family in an outdoor situation, like you say, I think I would just think of them. I hope I would think of them first and get them out of harm's way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't take my phone out and start videoing it. I know that.
Mike mentioned he was texting Chris. You texted me too, and I remember just like I was sitting here in Indiana, helpless, because I was like, how is this going to go? I mean, I was because you didn't know. I mean, when you were in the middle of it, you didn't know if they were going to confront you.
Yeah,
I know. Without the family, it would be a completely different story.
You see it on TV, and it's you feel there's this dispassionate separation, but man, when you're in the moment, it just like every instinct just comes flying out of you. So, all right,
what did you do in that situation?
So pulled them
his
back.
Lawyer won't let it, his attorney doesn't want him to say.
Dead men tell no tales.
I was trying to like pull in my inner Nate. No, just kind of what you said. Grab the family, backed away as much as you could. I mean, there was no place to go, but create some separation, because I knew if it got too much worse, then I was going to go a whole different direction, and that wouldn't have played out well either. Well, okay. And you kind of allude to some of the changes in Denver that I have witnessed in the past decade or so. Do you worry about Wyoming eventually following in Colorado's path of losing its historic ways of life and culture by falling in the trap of all the escapees from other states and cities, bringing their belief systems and their cultures and their politics with them?
Another really interesting, good question. I think I worried about that more than when I started meeting people who had, especially last summer, the place where I live, people were buying houses on the phone.
Yeah.
There are no available houses. They're starting to try to build some to keep up with the refugees in a way.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about that anymore, because I've met enough of them who have just moved here, who moved here specifically because they wanted to change they want to live in a place that reflected their values more, and were sick of the place they were living.
Yeah.
And so they kind of wanted to embrace the local, culture as opposed to change it. I don't know if that's the situation everywhere, but the people I have met who have moved to my part of Wyoming tend to kind of really get in, want to learn more about it, and kind of embrace the local stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they, outside values or different perspectives, but in most case, they moved here specifically for that reason, as opposed to saying, well, let's go infiltrate and take it over.
Well, that's what happened here. So that's why I was worried that same thing be happening in your neck of the woods.
I can't say that I've seen much.
Okay. Good deal.
Well, don't expect any sort of intellectually stimulating questions from my lightning round. But we talked about the adaptations in your novel series, but you've also had some tremendous standalones. And I don't want to put you on the spot at all, but we'd love to option Blue Heaven. And I'm just wondering, can you give us a friends and family discount?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that should be a movie.
Yes, it should. Yes, it
should be. It's been optioned 3 times. Nothing's ever developed. Nothing's ever happened. Wow. It's currently available, and it could be I just think that could be. It is a true standalone, and it's also one of my favorite books. And
yes.
I love. Yes, I'll make you a deal.
It's actually the first book I read of yours, believe it or not. I read that, and then just went and discovered the Joe Pickett series. So I love that book. Love it. Okay, second question. Another business Mike and Chris and I are toying with is a travel company that curates literary adventure trips where people can visit the locales of their favorite books, guided by their favorite authors when possible.
Yeah.
Since we just thought of it today, like 10 minutes before the interview, it's in the very early stages. And we're looking for test subjects that would be willing to run practice trips with us as sample guests. And I'm just wondering how busy your May-June window is.
I ran a international tourism marketing company for 24 years, where part of my job was to take journalists and tour operators from Europe and Scandinavia and Australia all around the Mountain West. I was their escort, guide, driver, etc. I've done that for 24 years. I'm done with it.
One more, just to make sure you know it.
Yeah, but that's a little more exciting.
I want to salute your idea, because I know that there are, because I have a tourism background, there are lots and lots of people who like to travel to see the locations of the books they've read. Yeah. And I think if you could formalize that in some way, you'll be wildly successful. And I applaud your idea. I would send you a list. I would send you a list of locations from the books, but I wouldn't meet them there.
Gotcha.
Well, no black outfits, people.
If that becomes a great business, it came because of the lightning round. I needed
something finally came out of it.
My last question is actually a write-in from an anonymous viewer that came to our mailbox. So I have no idea who this came from. When you come on for the next, or if you would come on for the Cassie Dewell novel, is it possible to bring Catherine Winnick and Kylie Bunbury? And this is kind of odd. Could you do a live interview with the crew? Because we'd love to see the interplay. I have no idea who wrote this, but.
Oh, I met them both on the set. They're both extremely attractive and lovely. Yeah. I seriously doubt I could convince them to come to Wyoming and bar.
We'll have at least one disappointed viewer out there.
Well, you were driving a white van when you asked. Yeah. Hey, congratulations. I can't believe it's 22
books.
I know.
That's amazing. But this was phenomenal. And we talked about this even before that we started the interview today, and that, the 2 storylines, you're basically getting 2 books in one. And Shadow's Reel kind of wrapped up the last book's questions and brought us some new material this time around in a wild way that I never would have guessed. And so this was a lot of fun because I felt like I was being pulled back into, from one storyline to the other at the perfect moments. So I think your fans are going to love this this format that you use this time around.
Going to be a lot of very happy Nate Romanowski fans out there.
Yes.
And then there's going to be a new cult of Geronimo fans.
I think so.
Good. I hope so.
So congratulations on all your success, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. We had C.J. Box on the show. Shadow Reel, 22 novels in that category. Like, my God, man.
That's just his Joe Pickett stuff.
Right. Exactly. This is, and just like another very famous author that you and I both love, this is 2 books in one. And it was wonderful because it really follows 2 separate lines. And so you really feel like you got a whole lot of extra money's worth on this one. Nate fans are going to love this. Yeah. And of course, the Joe Pickett and family fans are going to be extremely satisfied with this. So Shadows Reel. He's got Big Sky. He's got all kinds of TV series coming out. So CJ is on a serious roll. So folks, go out and get Shadows Reel. Help him get that top 10 list, New York Times. Let's go. And to all of our other fans, we'll see you on Mondays with another best-selling guest. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
And